is something that ultimately everything that we do fitness wise pivots around, in the sense that, I always tell clients, I'm like, what plan is the best plan for, the best plan, fitness plan? And the answer is, rhetorically, like the plan that you stick with. So what you're able to be consistent with is going to get you the most results. And I think that because we are emotional creatures and we're driven to our wants and immediate needs in a lot of ways by our lower brain, that is the biggest challenge, to stay consistent, to separate what we know we should do from what we feel or want to do in the moment, and the screens emotionally and embedded traumas and patterns that can get in the way of making those decisions layered even on top of that as well. So it is very important, because we're not robots, that we build a structure of accountability into our process or approach. It would be nice to say, if you just told someone one time to do something, then they immediately fix it and never had to struggle with it again. But it's, for 99.9% of us, myself included, it's not that easy. So we have to create structures and processes to make sure that we stick with those things throughout the duration of whatever goal we're getting to, whether that's, fitness, health, anything like that as well. So we'll definitely dive into all the good stuff there as well. So Jeremiah, I'm sure you've heard me say this before: consistency is greater than intensity. To you, yes. What does that mean when it comes to habits, accountability, things like that?
I mean, and I think it can apply to fitness as much as someone's career or professional world. We all want to improve, but it is better to be consistent and possibly even gradual over a period of time to get a result than going really, really hard, burning yourself out and, dropping out or not progressing at all for a couple months. That's definitely true at the gym. I can apply it to an old mentality of like having to work out and lift hard and progressive overload 5 to 6 days a week. And sure, that feels great and has some rewards, but inevitably, when I've ever pushed that hard, I would burn out and then end up taking a month or two off. And so you end up in a limbo or a cycle where you aren't actually progressing. So as we've discussed, throughout, the fitness program, showing up, and being consistent in the long run is likely the better approach.
Yes, I would go so far as to say, yes, it is the better approach. Right. I mean, just mathematically, even the going 100% and then burning out or overreaching, setting yourself up for failure, that stop and start cycle is really what crushes most people most of the time. I would say that is common for the average person that I work with that then comes to me, or for most people in general. The biggest challenge is building consistency. And I think one of the issues that leads to that lack of consistency is they overestimate their abilities and they underestimate the challenge ahead of them. So they essentially set themselves up for failure. Had they done the inverse and underestimated their abilities and overestimated the challenge, they probably would have been much further along at this point, because we know that, as one of the things that I've written here is, wins compound. And if we allow ourselves to start small, we give ourselves the opportunity to grow and learn and make mistakes, as opposed to, going for the grand slam at the first at bat, so to speak, to throw an unwarranted but appropriate sports metaphor into this. So one of the things that is common for people, especially with fitness, is the interplay between the two concepts of motivation and discipline, right? So how would you define motivation and how would you define discipline?
Discipline, I would say, is the appointments you make and keep with yourself, regardless of, or as much as possible, how you feel, distractions, other things going on. Anyone through has been through school knows it takes a certain amount of discipline to make sure you do your homework and prepare for a test or a quiz. Master's, PhD students, that's even amped up, where if you have this giant thesis due in a year, discipline is every little step you will take along the way to reach that goal. Motivation would be, I would say, the energy or drive or desire to complete that bigger task or goals. Like we as humans can use discipline to make ourselves do something we don't actually want to do, but it's healthy, it leads to a long-term goal, and it's something, you know, we decide to do to build towards. Motivation to me is, you know, that energy to actually want to do it and to, you know, get up and enjoy it. And it's great to have both when they go hand in hand, but you know, maximizing, I guess, the benefit if you feel more one than the other is also.
Yes, yeah, I think that's very well said. I like the comparison. I like the imagery of discipline as the thing that kind of carries the day, especially that you pointed out. I would add to that sort of the comparison between the two, and say that both exist. Like they are separate tools and they are separate things. One is much more reliable than the other. One can be developed, and the other we are almost just kind of victim to in a certain sense. I would also say that motivation is much more of an emotion, and much more emotionally tied. And in that way, just as our emotions may change from minute to minute or day to day, motivation will come and go. And it has a stronger sensation over us because it's emotionally tied. So we have that more, you know, emotions are tied to very base needs for humans. So a lot of times when we think about sort of the dream outcome of whatever we're working towards, we'll get that emotional connection, and that's where the motivation comes, which is strongest when we haven't yet confronted the reality of the amount of work that usually lofty goals take, and that emotion is still high. So the motivation is good, and it is important to recharge that battery throughout the process, especially on something that's going to take a long time. But ultimately, you know, people that are victims to motivation are also probably victims to immediate gratification, and they're going to struggle throughout until they're able to establish what you indicated, which is discipline, which is the ability to do the things that you know you should do, but you don't feel like doing at the moment. And the common imagery of constantly having to exercise willpower to maintain that is a complete misnomer and a road to ruin, because willpower, like motivation, is fickle and it will come and go. So instead, it's, you know, it's a thinking person's game, and we have to implement strategies, right? They always say, know thyself. So create strategies that don't rely on motivation, and don't rely on emotion, but instead rely on discipline. And the benefits of obviously sticking with something, as anyone knows, you're obviously going to see increasing returns over time, right? And the other thing is that, you know, as you become more consistent and better at something, you have an increasing sense of self-efficacy, right? So you become more confident in your ability to achieve, therefore you set higher goals, and you have this compounding upward or virtuous cycle forward, provided that you stick with it, right? Which is the, you know, the caveat to all this stuff, and I think the challenge for most people. Are you familiar with Malcolm Gladwell's book where he talks about the 10,000 hour mastery practice?
I'm not.
Oh, I forget which one of his books. You know, do you know who he is, the author?
No, I don't think so.
He's I forget, I don't know if he's a sociologist by trade or historian, but he's written many like popular pop-ed books on psychology. But one of them he brings up is this concept of the 10,000 hours to mastery, right? So examining any person throughout history that's achieved mastery in a particular pursuit, or at a certain time in their career, like say Beethoven fairly early or somebody like that, you know, within a margin of error, there's 10,000 hours of practice of whatever the skill is to become proficient at it to that level that they would achieve competency. And it's at that level, right? If you want to take this to, you know, it's deeper positive psychology, where one can achieve, you know, that flow state, right? Or, you know, transcendence above something. So, you know, sticking with things, I mean, for numerous reasons is really, really important. But if you haven't read those books, they're fun. I don't know how informational they really are, but they're, you know, those pop psychology facts that are fun to kind of throw around at parties and stuff. They're good for that as well. Well, so there's two main types of self accountability that, you know, we've experienced, and you especially have experienced. And the first one is the one that we must live with, you know, 99% of the time, and that's accountability to ourselves. So Jeremiah, if you would be open to it, you know, what are some ways that you hold yourself accountable?
On a like the methods I might use to actually make sure I'm keeping myself on track.
Yeah, let me reframe it better, I guess. So perhaps you have something that you wish to achieve that's going to take work, right? And you're going to have to, let's say when you have a goal, right, you haven't achieved it currently in the current state. So therefore, by definition, you must do things that are outside your normal behavior. You must add things and possibly in the process, remove things from your schedule, your time, and your energy in order to achieve the new goal, which means that you're going to have to do something differently, which means you're going to have to become consistent, which is going to require you to stay accountable to the path. So using that loosely as sort of the definition of accountability, do you have any like strategies or systems that you put in place personally for whether it's professionally, personal goal, health and fitness, anything like that?
Definitely calendaring, scheduling, goals can only be reached through actions. So is there, and sometimes we're working towards things where, it's intangible. There's no appointment to put down at 3 p.m., but I can still put down my tasks for the week that could potentially like lead to a goal. So that's probably where I start with accountability. Like what's on schedule, what can I put on calendar? Because something has a much, much higher likelihood of even becoming actualized or worked on if I can see it on a calendar. Like, granted, there's lots of little goals we do keep in our head, but yeah, whenever possible, putting it somewhere you can see it, creating a roadmap. Like I use, literal calendaring system, but it could take, I imagine, different form for someone else, journal or flowchart.
Yeah, vision board, things like that. Yeah, so I guess to distill a little bit from what you said, because there was a lot to unpack there, like a lot of great stuff. The first thing it sounds like is, keep mentioning starting with the goal. Like you have to know the direction that you're heading.
Oh, sure.
Right, like what that North Star is. And one thing that I think is really important for people to consider, and this is a whole larger conversation, is making sure that those goals are aligned with something that's valuable to you, because that's going to build an implicit layer of commitment. If it's something that's, opposed to a core value of yours, you're going to be less inclined to pursue it, especially when it becomes challenging. So if you set a goal of like make $1 million, but you're not really a materialistic person and don't care that much about money, then eventually when that pursuit, which could be challenging, gets hard, you're not going to be that motivated. So it's a lot of times I think people want things for reasons outside themselves, and when they don't properly align the outcome that they're looking for with who they are, what they truly want deep down, and being honest with themselves, and they're not going to see success, which can be a very, a really challenging negative feedback loop for a lot of people. So I think it's important from square one to make sure that we're aligning our outcomes with our values. And I think the other thing too is as we go through the process, because it can be long and arduous for whatever the goals that are worthwhile that take time, connecting to what the dream outcome is and making it very real and tangible to ourselves. So seeing the success as, woo-woo or sort of existential as that is, but like if you want to lose 50 pounds, picturing yourself at that milestone, at that mile marker, how are you going to feel? Connect with that person or that sensation of accomplishing that goal regularly to make it real and have some type of emotional connection to it, because emotion speaks strongest. And I think one thing you said too, you were very clear on was, setting milestones, making things time sensitive, in your case, calendaring them, right?
Yes, and what those steps would look like. Ideally, can you break it down? Like if you have a big goal you're working towards, what do you need to look at on a daily basis, possibly weekly basis, quarterly, sort of different levels. And obviously time frame can change and be flexible depending what we're talking about. But it's only by actions that you're ever moving forward towards a goal. So knowing what your next action is or what you should be, working on next.
Yes. And I think like working with you and myself included, we're both very process oriented. So we like to see sort of the steps. We like to deconstruct the pathway to achievement, and then it's broken down into manageable chunks. And one thing too that goes along with that is creating a check-in process for yourself. Like at X time, have I achieved what I wanted to? And the thing I think most people miss, especially high achievers, is rewarding yourself at these junctures along the way. Because we do at a certain sense have, that behavioralist inclination to want a reward for something. And if we're not reinforcing positive behavior, it's less likely to persist. Mm-hmm. And I think the challenging thing with fitness, and maybe you can chime in on this as well, especially if we're focusing on weight loss as a goal, a lot of times we've been inclined to reward ourselves with food. And now, we can't reward ourselves with food anymore. So it can be challenging to find something else. So, when in your experience with fitness, like what's an alternative reward system for milestones along the way?
Um, Recreational, time. I would say like whatever your hobby or recreation is, we as professionals tend to put those aside or deprioritize them. But I think when dealing with fitness goals, that could be a good way to put it. There can be things that rewards that, on the surface can seem superficial, but are significant and can be their own milestones. So I reached a point in weight loss with you where I needed to get Under Armour, and that was cool because I had lost so much weight, and there were like structural reasons why I need to get the Under Armour, and it's comfortable and looks cool. So something like that. So at least it wasn't food related, but I was like, a reward of new gym clothes, basically.
No, that's really smart because as we know from sort of behavior modification and habit formation, you can't just go cold turkey, right? That's a misnomer. Like we have our trigger response reward system in place. The trigger is not going anywhere, right? We have to keep that there. So the response is what we have the ability to change. And initially, you may not get the same dopamine response from buying Under Armour as you might have in the past from something else. But over time, if you continue to persist with that reward, then it will take on as strong a meaning as maybe the afferent reward did before, right? So if we're trying to be healthy, going out and eating a half gallon of ice cream is probably an afferent reward system. But instead, if we're buying new gym clothes or we're, giving something to ourselves as a reward that's not in opposition to our goals, then that over time will be as strong as the ice cream once was. Although we both know ice cream is delicious. Can't take that away. And as part of that process too, that rigorous kind of reward and reflection process, I think personal feedback is always important. So as you know, I'm an advocate of celebrating one's wins and acknowledging one's lessons. Right. So, what are our wins? What are our accomplishments within the context of our pursuit of our goals? And then also, I don't call them failures, but I call them lessons because they were learning experiences and we have to reframe them in that way. So making sure that, as you're going through the process, what's going well, what could be improved. And the last part is a little bit different. And I'm interested to hear how you do this as well. But I think exposing yourself to positive influences around your goal can tie back in not as much to the discipline, but the motivation part. So, for example, listening to motivational speakers or reading things, positive stories or uplifting information, avoiding negativity or dissent in pursuit of the goals can be helpful. And most commonly surrounding yourself by like-minded people that are also, in pursuit of what you are as well and achieving at a high level. Do you have any things that you turn to gather motivation sometimes for kind of like a boost?
I think social media, wow, there's a lot going on there, but I think I try to follow people, some fitness people that are at maybe very different levels, doing very different things, or could even be a professional athlete that, is inspiring. Or I found a new Paralympian this last week who has like a great fitness minded IG, and like he wasn't born with legs, like stuff like that. Finding someone that's inspirational and putting the work in, and it can mean almost any sport, or it could be in traditional bodybuilding, is good. And I think we all see, there's also maybe some toxic or negative accounts in the space, and so being aware of that. Following, people on social media that make you happy and encourage you. My Fitness Pal will have really good little stories when you open it on the splash page about people that have lost like 100 pounds, 150 pounds. I always like to read those. That's like, super good, figure out other people's journey and history with it. And it's all different, how people get there. But you hit on the most important thing, I think, is the people around you in your actual life, not away from social media. What is your support network, and is everyone being positive and supportive and encouraging of you? And if not, are there potentially any healthy boundaries or barriers you need to draw with some people in your life, especially with weight loss? and food habits and family and friends. There are those people or relatives that for whatever reason will always want you to eat a certain way or sort of push food in a certain way. So it's not positive all the time, depending on your goals. So being aware of this.
Yes, yeah, agreed. And I think it's you have to be vigilant, and you have to make those hard decisions sometimes about who who you spend time with. What essentially becomes more important is that person's decision making or your long-term goals, because there may be a incompatibility between those two things as well, which you must be reading my mind, because that's actually a perfect segue into our next section, which is the accountability that exists outside ourselves, right? And now we ultimately, like, the process of growth and which is inevitable when pursuing something new, right? By definition, a lot of it is going to fall down. There will be lonely moments. The challenges will ultimately be our own, and the growth will be personal. But sometimes it's important to have a guide or a partner in that pursuit. And I've broken them down into essentially three forms that they can take. So one becomes like me, coach. Another is an accountability partner, and another is a group or a tribe with like-minded goals, as you alluded to, with being around those people. So the differences are, mostly technical. The intent should be the same. They each have their pluses and minuses. A coach or mentor is someone who probably has professional experience and structure to provide, or a framework to follow. And they're going to apply that framework with an understanding of the person who they're guiding's unique situation as well. One of the positive attributes of this relationship is that you're getting a proven system or structure backed by knowledge. But at the same time, this person knows their system. They learn to get you and understand how to apply it to you. The inverse of that would be an accountability partner who would know you, someone that's close to you. They know you, and they would work with you on a deeper level in that sense. But at the same time, they may not have the technical knowledge or professional knowledge to help someone navigate challenging situations that come up as well. Coaches and mentors do it with you in the sense that they are guiding you, they're standing side by side with you, but they're not participating in the exact same process that you are. They're not experiencing the feelings that you are. They can only empathize, not sympathize with the experience of change or growth or challenge that's going on, as opposed to an accountability partner, who in this definition would be someone that's going through the process of change with you, whether it's a coworker, a friend, something like that. We'll use fitness as an example for this one, but say it's, you're both trying to build muscle and you're eating 10,000 calories a day and go to the gym 6 days a week and just checking in with each other and just complaining about how full you are all the time, back and forth. That commiserating is important. That bond that's built, that can be very, very strong, especially with the shared experience that goes through. So they're doing the work with you, and they know you well. The challenge again may be that if that person is as human as you are, because they're going through the experience, if they start to fall off, it could potentially drag you down, or you may have to overexert energy towards supporting that person that could be devoted to yourself. So that's always something to consider. You don't want to be too invested in working with someone as a accountability partner. You want to make sure you keep boundaries between that. The combination of the two, which is almost a best of both worlds, is a mastermind or coaching group that's led by a coach or mentor or series of mentors or coaches that teaches a system or provides professional leadership, but is filled with people that are going through the same process or experience or a comparable process as oneself and growth. And through that way, you're kind of getting both. You're getting the outreach and the structure of the mentor or the coach, and at the same time, you have people to commiserate with or to get support from. Or sometimes it's good to just know that you're not the only one experiencing what you're experiencing, right? Now, obviously these structures transcend sort of fitness, but that's what we're talking about today. Have you experienced any of these outside of our coaching work together?
Sure. Professionally, I think it's important to know what your goal is and see if there's anyone within or even outside your organization you can and talk to for advice. Basically, especially if this big goal, don't try to get there from scratch, or invent the wheel yourself. So I have good sort of mentors in my organization. If my goal is to bring in business or sign clients, there are people in my organization that have done that, and have the book of clients. So trying to, whether if they're actively your mentor or signed you, that's great. But sitting down and asking, how they did it. And depending on the industry, I realize there could be some gatekeeping, it may not be as easy as that. But I'm fortunate where, within my firm, people will want to share their information with me of how they got there. So I think that's really important, especially if you have this goal and you just, like me, no idea how to get there, what the steps would look like. So yes, coaching, mentoring, definitely.
Yeah, and I think that the mentor situation is an entirely different process, but the evidence all seems to be the form of apprenticeship that existed in Western society for so long was extremely efficient for numerous reasons. But I think like that one of the surest ways to the term level up has become overpopularized, but in that sense, to move at a faster pace in your growth and development is to join yourself to someone, to start to mimic their behaviors, because we are social creatures. So we'll start to mimic the behaviors of those that we respect and we spend time around. And that's a sure way, because instead of having the process of learning, assessing, and implementing over and over with new strategies, a lot of that becomes assumed with someone that's achieved success, and that mimicry that happens will cause you to move faster. So if there was one hack, again, to use another trite term, that I would suggest to people is like, if you want to do something, whether it's fitness or something like that, get around the people that are doing the thing that you want to do. And that'll be the greatest form of accountability. Subliminally, like in your processing power, we are built to act like the people around us. So we will not violate the cultural norms of the group. So if you want to be fit and healthy and you're surrounded by people going out to eat salads, you're probably not going to order pizza. Right. So that's another form as well. My suggestion always to people is find the combination that works best for you. But I like to overplan. What is it? NASA has the term 2 is 1 and 1 is none. So that's sort of my approach as well. And it's like, look, if you can find a system where you have multiple layers of accountability through the people in your life, through working with someone professionally, through joining a group that supports that, then you've really covered all bases, and you're really not insured, but you've given yourself a much greater chance for success and staying on track with things as well. And I think a lot of support systems and social groups that are successful with modifying behavior long term, they rely on a system like this with a combination of mentorship, surrounding yourselves with healthy influences, and then being part of a larger group with shared values like that. So Jeremiah, I've talked far too much. So is there anything else, any accountability tips or anything that you can think of that I might have missed?
No, I think it was very thorough, hit on a lot. Accountability, partnership. I think you definitely see that in like not just CrossFit, but the rise of boot camp or CrossFit-esque workout things. They can build a neat little community. And now there's a lot of diversity in them too. So you can find one, that maybe you feel you fit more into, or is more diverse in some way than like the traditional ultra intense like CrossFit box.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that was the success of that fitness model has been largely predicated on the shared experience and sense of group community and everything like that. So yeah, very, very good point. And also why it might die out is that is lost by certain owners and community members and things like that. But yeah, I mean, huge topic. I mean, because again, we're speaking about it in the fitness sense, but it does definitely transcend that, the ability to stay accountable and consistent in pursuit of a goal, for sure. So hopefully we will find the secret sauce, and everyone will be 100% accountable moving forward.
Right. It's the biggest mystery, like how to propel yourself and keep your momentum and keep yourself on path when you're not feeling it, when you're tired, when you're not in the mood, how to get yourself to show up and do the work anyways. But, hey, like we built the pyramids, we make these amazing creations. We have to take inspiration from the good things that come out of